Is Ohio State still the standard of the Big Ten, or is the crown slipping? For nearly 2 decades, one question in the Big Ten Conference has always had the same answer. Who runs this conference? Ohio State. The Buckeyes have been the undisputed kings of the Big Ten, a constant force that every other team has tried to emulate, challenge, and beat. But with realignment, the chaos of the nil image and likeness landscape, and playoff expansion, that answer is starting to look a lot less certain. Is Ohio State still the top dog of the Big Ten, or has the crown slipped, with new challengers emerging to share the throne? Let's break down the current state of the Big Ten and whether the Buckeyes are still the conference standard. What does the standard actually mean? When we talk about a program being the standard of a conference, it goes beyond simply winning games. To be considered the gold standard, a program must dominate several key areas: recruiting, player development, big game victories, and overall influence in the conference. Ohio State has checked every one of these boxes for years. Recruiting. The Buckeyes consistently recruit at the top level, bringing in top 5 classes year after year. Their ability to land 5-star players, even in the face of fierce competition from other elite programs, has been a cornerstone of their dominance. NFL talent. Ohio State sends more players to the NFL than almost any program in the country, with multiple first-round draft picks regularly. This level of talent influx keeps their roster stacked year after year, ensuring they have the depth to contend at the highest levels. Big game success, whether it's Big Ten championships, playoff appearances, or bowl wins, Ohio State has proven they can deliver in the postseason. Their success in high-pressure situations has made them the program everyone else wants to emulate. Conference leadership. For a long time, Ohio State didn't just compete for titles, they were the team everyone else had to chase. The Buckeyes had the formula for sustained success and were a model of excellence within the Big Ten. For much of the last 20 years, Ohio State wasn't just good, they were inevitable. They were the measuring stick by which all other Big Ten programs were judged. But that definition of the standard is starting to face some real challenges. The case for Ohio State still being the standard. Let's make one thing clear. Ohio State isn't falling off a cliff. From a talent standpoint, they're still elite. They're still recruiting at an incredible level, attracting some of the best players in the country. Even during what could be considered a down year, Ohio State still finishes with 10 or 11 wins. That's no small feat. What's more, Ohio State remains one of the few teams in the Big Ten where anything less than a playoff berth feels like a failure. This continued expectation of success underscores the fact that they remain one of the top teams in college football. Their roster depth is still better than most, and they continue to churn out NFL talent, making them a force to be reckoned with in the national landscape. However, this dominance isn't as certain as it once was. While Ohio State is still the complete package in many ways, there's a growing sense that other teams are catching up, and in some cases, surpassing them. The shift in the balance of power within the Big Ten is becoming increasingly evident, and it's not just 1 or 2 teams making waves, it's multiple programs pushing for that top spot. The problem: the gap is closing. For the longest time, Ohio State had a near monopoly on the Big Ten. They were head and shoulders above everyone else, especially when it came to recruiting, roster depth, and overall program strength. But that gap is shrinking. The first major challenger? Michigan. After years of frustration, the Wolverines finally broke through by beating Ohio State head-to-head and claiming a Big Ten title. Michigan's success was a clear indication that Ohio State wasn't invincible anymore. Not only did Michigan dethrone Ohio State in the rivalry, but they also showed they could win big games consistently, culminating in a trip to the college football playoff. Their ability to build a powerful, balanced roster has positioned them as a legitimate contender to Ohio State's throne. Then there's Penn State. The Nittany Lions continue to stack elite recruiting classes and have a roster that's knocking on the door of greatness. James Franklin's squad is right there, and if they continue to build on their momentum, they could be the next team to challenge Ohio State for the top spot in the conference. Penn State's defense has been a standout, and their ability to recruit top-tier offensive talent is closing the gap with Ohio State's offensive juggernaut. But the biggest game changer in the Big Ten realignment? The arrival of Oregon and USC. Oregon brings SEC-level recruiting, elite line play, and a roster built for playoff football. They've made their mark on the national stage, and now they bring that competitive edge to the Big Ten. Their depth is rivaling Ohio State's, and that's a major shift in the conference dynamics. Oregon has been a playoff caliber team in the past, and with the addition of the Big Ten spotlight, they could attract even more top-tier talent to bolster their already impressive roster. USC is an offensive powerhouse, with a national brand and recruiting pool that immediately changes the landscape of the West Coast battles. Even with questions surrounding their defense, USC's offensive firepower raises the Big Ten's overall ceiling. With Lincoln Riley at the helm, the Trojans are already showing glimpses of their potential to compete for national championships. USC's offensive prowess, led by Heisman-caliber quarterbacks and skilled playmakers, will make them a team to watch for years to come. Ohio State used to be the team that walked into every season knowing they had the most complete roster in the conference. Now, that advantage is no longer guaranteed. Ohio State isn't falling, but they're no longer standing alone. And that leads us to the most pressing question. If Ohio State is still the standard, why is there now a growing list of teams capable of challenging them for supremacy? Big game questions. Can Ohio State still deliver? Ohio State remains a dominant force in the Big Ten, but the biggest criticism lately has been their performance in season-defining games. Against elite defenses, physical teams, and playoff-level opponents, the Buckeyes have struggled to consistently get over the hump. The Buckeyes' playoff appearances in recent years have been full of high expectations, but also disappointing results. They have struggled to outplay teams with similarly talented rosters and have shown vulnerabilities against physical, balanced teams. Ohio State's defense, while generally solid, has sometimes failed to stop more dynamic offenses, and their offense has struggled against teams that have a strong defensive game plan. In past years, if you wanted the Big Ten championship, you had to go through Ohio State. That was the standard. But now, that feels less like an inevitability and more like a competition among multiple teams who are all capable of winning it. The margin for error for Ohio State has gotten thinner, and in a conference now featuring several playoff caliber teams, every mistake is magnified. Realignment, changing the Big Ten forever. Conference expansion has changed the Big Ten in ways that benefit Ohio State, but also dilute their previous dominance. Oregon and USC are elite programs, and their inclusion in the Big Ten means that Ohio State has to compete with even more powerhouse teams. The addition of these schools eliminates Ohio State's monopoly on the conference and increases the overall level of competition. With the addition of these two programs, the Big Ten is becoming a much more competitive conference. More recruiting battles mean that Ohio State, which used to get the pick of the litter, will now have to fight for top recruits. More playoff-level matchups mean that the Buckeyes are facing tougher teams throughout the season, not just in the postseason. Less margin for dominance means Ohio State has to be at their best, week in and week out, knowing that their competitors are getting stronger and more capable of toppling them. As the conference expands, Ohio State now finds itself in a more crowded room. More recruiting battles, more playoff-level matchups, and less margin for error mean that Ohio State's path to dominance is no longer as clear-cut as it used to be. They may still be one of the best teams, but they are no longer the only team that matters. So, are they still the standard? Here's the honest answer. Ohio State is still the most complete program in the Big Ten. They are still one of the most talented teams in the country, but they are no longer untouchable. The standard hasn't disappeared, it's just being shared for the first time in years. Ohio State isn't chasing the conference, but they're also no longer miles ahead of it. The emergence of Michigan, Penn State, Oregon, and USC has made the Big Ten a much more competitive environment. For Ohio State, the pressure to maintain their status as the conference's top program is greater than ever. They must continue to evolve to meet the challenges posed by these up-and-coming programs if they are to remain at the top. The next few seasons will be crucial in determining whether Ohio State can reclaim full control of the conference, or if they will be forced to share the throne with several other teams that now have the resources, talent, and recruiting power to challenge them. Is Ohio State still the Big Ten standard? Yes, but the crown is no longer solely theirs. They now have company, and the competition is fiercer than ever. Drop your take in the comments below. Is Ohio State still the Big Ten standard, or has the power shifted? Subscribe for more Big Ten football breakdowns, recruiting analysis, and conference power debates.